Yo, repping the inevitable Samoa Joe from back in his NXT days. I'm wearing my 205 Live cap. I watched every episode of 205 Live until I watched it actually live at the O2 with my friend Chris Anousis. Thanks for the tickets, my guy. Okay, listen. Before the moment passes and there's Monday Night Raw afoot, let's review Wrestlemania 37. Big time stuff. Also, I heard Samoa Joe's off commentary. Does that mean he's making an in-ring return? Is that tonight? Is anything else happening tonight? We shall see. I got back into wrestling about 7 years ago now, which is nice timing. It was in the lead up to WrestleMania 30, and the crowning moment in professional wrestling history, in my opinion. Daniel Bryan winning the championship over the course of 2 matches. He won 2 championships, bless his heart. Best moment ever. Became a big Daniel Bryan fan at the same time as reigniting my love for professional wrestling. Shout out to Tom Davey for being into it during the 20s, those WrestleManias when I was not as much of a fan, and then he got me back into it just in time for 30, and then Punk bailed, and he bailed, no connection, surely. And then I've been in ever since, ever so slightly dip out here or there. I don't necessarily think it's the healthiest to keep up with every single fucking show, and I find it very hard to be into a show without doing that. So see how we go post-Mania. Post-Mania always feels like a funny, reassessing how hard the fandom runs, how much of a commitment in one's life one can make to the art of professional wrestling. But to recap WrestleMania, the show of shows, nice little time capsule just to soak in the fact that a year ago, WrestleMania 36, it's going to be crazy how history looks back on it, but they put on a show for us in a fucking performance center, and led to a lot of innovation over the course of 2 nights with the Boneyard match and the Firefly Funhouse match. But besides that, very early days of the pandemics and lockdowns around the world, and a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, and they just kept the show going. Whatever hate and whatever criticism that can be legit as fuck, that corporation kept it going. Never dropping the ball in terms of actually not fulfilling their television commitments. They put on so much television, and all they had to work with was a performance center, and they made it work, and it was insane. And I remember being very hyped for it. I think it's the first time in many, many years I actually stayed up all night to watch it, as opposed to this year, every other year where I watched it the day after, because come on now, I'm getting old. But it's just crazy that was a year ago. And in the lead up to that Mania, they'd been doing all the shows from the Performance Center. And then, since then, up until Saturday night, no fans. And professional wrestling, whatever art it is definitely a kind of performance art. And more than a lot of different performance arts, let alone sports, let alone fake sports. Fake. This is all about the dance with the audience and bouncing off the crowd and who's over and it's about the relationship with the noises the crowd makes, the energy. And in being someone watching it through a screen, you can tell that. You can tell how they're bouncing off each other. In being part of the audience, you can tell that. I imagine in the ring, it's such a big aspect of it. And besides Daniel Bryan, who's just my favorite guy in the world, an absolute fucking lunatic who's just in love with grappling, every wrestler in this last year has commented on how tough it's been losing that super important aspect. He just loves sweating and beating up on people in the ring. I think I heard him once in an interview talking about this really sweet spot between real life jiu-jitsu and sort of play fighting and sort of simulating a real fight that wrestling is. And I dig it, but and it's ironic, he's a fucking 2-time WrestleMania headliner now, but the key is the crowd, man. and the crowd came back, and goddamn, if night one didn't get me a little choked up when they all come out and they're all on stage, and Vince McMahon is giving props to the crowd, and I'm thinking they're going to save that first big audience interaction for an entrance, and it's just all of them out on stage. And it's like, it's a low-key dropping kayfabe moment when they're all out there. And it looks like, it reminds me of like the cast of a kid's play coming out and taking a bow beforehand. Like, oh, we're about to go play these crazy little characters, but hi mom, hi dad. It's just, they're all out there standing next to each other, and Rhea Ripley's tearing up, and Jinder Mahal's there for no discernible reason, bless his heart, don't hinder Jinder. And they're just all out there, and I love that moment. And low battery, let me put it on charge. Hello, are we charging? I'm doing this with the very last of my battery. I've had a very long day. Ran a half marathon yesterday, lifted weights for the first time in my life today. I don't know what I'm fucking doing. I'm very tired. Are you charging or nah? Who gives a fucking shit? So I loved that moment. Vince talking to the crowd. And then, yeah, just reflecting on what a mad journey it's been for this entire company to go a year without fans. I wonder how, like, wrestling is a microcosm of stuff. It's a fun lens to look at things through. It's an alternate universe. It makes no fucking sense. It's like a little TV show, but it's also like a live soap opera serial. So it's like a simulated, prize-fighting, alternate reality TV show, but also there's this aspect of it I love, where especially in the WWE, where there's this like continuity for 37 plus years, where there's like very in-depth rich history and like these cast of characters and all their ups and downs, and reminds me of SNL in a way, but you know, the amount of content they put out comparatively is shockingly high, but it's also like stunt fighting and very athletic. All that to say, with using wrestling as a lens, it's a very interesting microcosm historically for what we've been through, if you're just looking at least entertainment during the pandemic. And I don't actually know now, I'm not clear on the details of how going forward they're going to do it. I don't know if Raw tonight is from a sold out Raymond James Stadium, sold out, you know, safe COVID protocol capacity, blah, blah, blah. Or if it's back at the Thunderdome, like, I don't know, but like, they went this year without a crowd, and a big part of performing and wrestling is working off a crowd. And then the crowd was back, and it was kind of beautiful, because I feel like a lot of people were feeling this thing when we had all our first lockdowns of like, whether it was live shows, music, theater, gigs, wrestling, for a while, and it was the same for me too. I feel like it wasn't until I read that it was for someone else, and then it became for me, which is always the fucking way and sucks. But like, during that time, it was hard to watch stuff with crowds, because you're sort of like, oh, are we ever going to get that again? Oh, that was so fun. Yeah, and to a degree, I didn't watch too much old stuff. Like, we're in a new reality, get used to it. And it was very stark, the very first few episodes of Raw and SmackDown without a crowd, man. It was so stark. It was like just a bunch of the dudes that you usually see in front of these 1,000-strong crowds working in a little gym, basically talking to each other, and you could just sense how uncomfortable. And from a performer's point of view and standpoint, so fucking interesting to watch how on the fly they have to keep up these characters, these storylines, and just work under these new circumstances. Fascinating stuff. But anyway, the crowd's back. I've spent 10 minutes trying to tell you that it was emotional as fuck to see an industry get to reconnect with its essence. And all these individual cast members, the performers, the talent, as it were, the wrestlers. So, felt a bit emotional. I don't know quite where my fandom goes in terms of day-to-day scheduling, but I've really loved wrestling. The last 7 years I've been to a few live shows. Ring of Honor in its sort of the Young Bucks and Cody taking over on the way to the inception of AEW and my favorite thing. And I loved those indie shows, but I even went to my first few WWE shows going with my mum and sister and with one of my best friends in the world, Chris Anousis, God bless his heart and soul, for getting tickets to SmackDown at the O2 and getting to see live my favorite wrestler in the world, Daniel Bryan. But you know, there's a lot of shade you can throw at it, and especially the big Disneyfied corporate overlords that are the WWE, and a lot of arguments with AEW loving friends of mine who have sworn off the WWE, but I'm like, it's all fucking wrestling. And I'm a weird sort of, I support wrestlers more than, because they're like fully rounded artists in a way, they're like actors. Like if you can find it confusing that people go to certain films just for an actor, I'd follow certain wrestlers I like anyway. I don't know why, but this feels like an elegy to my fandom right now, where I need to watch less wrestling. But I don't know. I love it. I've loved it. It's been really nice. It's just, I don't know what it is. It might be a problem with UFC and MMA and Netflix and streaming in general for me, but like there's too much. And I stay overly committed to shit I get into, and it's just too much shit the network pumps out. Like, I'm gutted I had to stop watching 205 Live. Like, goddamn, Mustafa Ali versus Buddy Murphy a few years ago was one of the best matches on WWE television for a time, and I watched the first little run of WWE NXT UK. Couldn't fucking keep up with that shit. It seemed great. I watched the first season of Lucha Underground. I was like, this is fun. I keep up with Dynamite. I was keeping up with Dark for a while. Dark Elevation now. It's like, it's too much. Oh my God. I think I'm just going to watch SmackDown and that's it. I don't know. Anyway, all this to say, I've loved wrestling, and I think I can be a bit overly forgiving compared to other people, less cutting criticism. But I also don't want to hate watch too much. If all I've got to say is biting critique and what I didn't like watch something else. Like if I end up sticking to my word and watching less wrestling now, it's kind of underdressed. Like I only watch it because I like it. And low-key, it can be one of those few nice entertainment forms that you don't always have to be 100% engaged with moment to moment, and you save that sort of deeper concentration for movies or longer form television or books. But yeah, wrestling is great like that, where for a bit you can sort of tune out, but it's with you. It's a comfort, man. It's great. I love wrestling. I've connected with loads of friends over it in the last few years. But let's talk about Mania now, 12 minutes into this, pardon me, review. So, night one, the rain delay. Everyone on Twitter just fucking freaking out. It was great. And then actual panic that it's not going to go off after the nightmare, hellish year that took us to this glorious crowding, return of the crowd moment. I don't know what the fuck's going to happen, but it ended up fucking as if it was scripted, where it just got a half an hour rain delay, where Samoa Joe and Michael Cole get to be a bit funny, and they go backstage to promos. And this is where wrestling's great, where without having days of advance notice, literal weather is changing shit, and off the cuff, let's get some, even though you've done this all week, for months even, let's get some more last minute promos backstage with the wrestlers. And Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley knock it out of the park, who up until the very last few seconds of the build-up I wasn't really that bothered about, and Drew was fired up backstage. You could sense a really cool nervous energy. Bobby Lashley, a really cool nervous energy from Drew. Like he seemed legit, like I'm trying to collect my emotions here because this is a lot, and it meant a lot to him to open the card and have this moment that he missed out on last year when he won the championship by beating Brock, and he was about to get this moment where it paid off and he reconnected with the crowd and getting all the big pops that since he eliminated Brock at the Rumble even, and won the Rumble, and then beat Brock. It's like he needed that, and you could sense this nervous energy from him. And Lashley, who always does this, like, I'm focused, I'm hard, he's doing this thing where not only, and he's like using MVP as his mouthpiece, not talking too much, and, you know, I'm just focused and I'm an MMA fighter and I'm fucking so jacked. He's like slightly improved the intensity somehow, which doesn't seem possible, but he seemed even more fucking angry, like movie villain sort of prize fighter. And even with MVP, he seemed more believable on the mic somehow. I don't know if it was the Hurt Business going and him having to step it up now as a sort of one-man show with just one mic piece, as opposed to a whole stable, or the fact that he was about to do this match, but he killed it backstage. Kevin Owens fucking killed it. I love when he asked the interviewer, just give me your mic, and he's like, time for me to go back to my bread and butter. This is how I earn my keep. I cut promos. I talk from my heart to you. I connect with whatever I'm feeling. I sell a match. I sell a situation. I give you some historical context. I get fired up. Kevin is the best at that shit, man. So good. So that half an hour of build-up was just like, like, as long as, like, and I could see on the network, it's a 3.5-hour long show. So even though I'm not going on social media for fear of spoilers, I know it's going to go off. And got a text from my friend Ali saying, you know, don't panic with the rain delay, it's going to go off. But, like, even without that text, like, I was like, this is going to come off. And I was sort of like, and then they said, like, it's 5 minutes away, blah, blah, blah. And then finally, Drew comes out. He goes, 3, 2, 1. I love that just overly physical gesture to really ram home the you and I crowd, we're into acting. Because, like, I think he does that before the Claymore now, and he never used to. But he's just like, how can I get a bit more oomph between us? It's different styles of wrestling, man, for different people. Like, I was listening to another podcast talking about Walter, who was fucking amazing at TakeOver against Ciampa, and he'd fucking never do that shit. He's not gonna go 1, 2, 3 before he chops someone and does a finisher. Like, it's funny how different shit works for different people. I wonder if it's that, or if just making a WrestleMania headlining match, maybe Walter would have to. No, he couldn't. It suits different people, man. And Drew has become this I wanted your love for so long crowd, but now the story is now I earned my stripes, I love myself. So now when he asks the crowd for love, it comes more easily, and he's not going 3, 2, 1 as a 3MB member, and everyone's like, what? Like, he's earned it. He can do that shit. So he does that shit. He does the weird shit with his sword. Fucking King Arthur over here. Goes to the ring, Bobby comes out. You know, I'm still a bit split on the whole Hurt Business thing, but the thing everyone's saying that sort of won me over is, if the reason the Hurt Business broke up is because people would cheer the Hurt Business and it wouldn't allow for Bobby to be the heel in this situation, that's true. I don't want to cheer Bobby anymore, but if he was with the Hurt Business and you've got this crew vibe and this cool vibe, literally just add Cedric and Shelton and there's, you know, it's double the size, it's suddenly 4 people, there's something cooler about it. And then just him with his one mouthpiece MVP, he is, funnily enough, along with Sasha and Bailey, the MVP of the pandemic for me, and Zelina Vega of the early days before she got let go. Really bad call, WWE. Like, I don't want to cheer him. He's a heel through and through. Like, he was winning me over with the boys, and then he doesn't have the boys. I'm like, oh, okay, fuck this guy, it worked. Out he comes to the ring, and they put on a great match, man. Like, I'm hearing stuff about how they're both, like, sculpted out of Vince McMahon's imagination, aesthetically. And neither of them are absolute top-tier firecrackers on the mic. Drew's gotten so much better. MVP's a lot better too, and really helps with... Bobby Lashley's a lot better too, but it certainly helps that he has MVP. But they're never going to be, like, The Rock levels. They've never quite won me over as, like, through and through one of my favorite wrestlers kind of fandom on my end. They're almost too good. They're almost too cookie cutter. And yet, with that said, with those physical attributes, they both got fired. Had to go around the world. Had to go to TNA, doing their own thing. Bobby's had a few fights, legit MMA fights at Bellator, like weird career arcs. And this is the thing that fucking astounds me. With WWE still in mind all the way to get back there Just like Andrade says now. And I'm like, what? You just left and you're having to recalibrate. And yet for some people, it's like WWE is so big. The long play is I have to eventually get back here. And to me, off the top of my head, that seems a bit like unhealthy. Like focus on the fact, you know, whether it's AEW or anything else, there's other shit out there. But for some people it works and they get back here. And not only do they get back here, they end up having a fucking title match at Mania. This match headlined Impact pay-per-views. And it opened a WrestleMania card, which is kind of astounding to me. But yeah, they're like... So they're both the cookie cutter sort of big man, Hoss, jacked up, Vince McMahon's wet dream kind of looking wrestlers, but they also have these crazy hard knocks histories to get them back to this. So like you have to root for them in a way. And they actually worked a really fun, exciting style. Like Bobby's getting up there in age, but he can still fucking go with all that muscle. He can go. Like it's not my favorite style. It's not always super engrossing. If they play this, if they rematch a few times on Raw, I end up getting bored. But it matched the energy of the crowd. They brought it. If it had gone in later on the card, maybe it wouldn't have. But like solid 6.757. I don't know. I'm not fucking Meltzer over here. It's solid 7 out of 10. They did great. I could not believe, like a few spots were really good, but when Drew lost, I was like, oh my days. I was like, I was all kinds of emotionally in and sold on this Mania, and I can't believe you've done that to Drew. And I was like really gutted for a minute. And I was like, okay, firstly, I'm feeling like I did when I was a kid, where I'm legit disappointed, as if a sportsman I like has actually lost a sport, a match, a game or something. That's good. I'm being worked and I feel like a kid. That's good. And also, Drew winning, yep, he lifts the title. Yes, he did it. He gets to have that moment. He didn't get him losing. Now they've legit emotionally moved me where like I'm rooting for Drew now. Like I don't know what the next few months hold, but that's now lodged in my brain as a fan where I'm like, but they did Drew dirty. Now I really, whatever's gonna happen, please give it to Drew now. And that's something, I don't know how, much that's like a conscious thing or just inbuilt to the process of building intrigue in a different heel or face or a different match. But I think I realized that around the time of the best example, the Daniel Bryan build-up. The more they buried him on the way to Mania, you needed him to win, and eventually it got that Mania payoff where they had to. But along the way, I remember I was just a very recently returned fan, so I was finding all the discourse very interesting. And it was like a lot of people were legit upset that they kept burying him in the promos. You're a B-plus player, you can't be on the show, this, that. Just got you to root for him. And I sort of feel like as much as I wanted Drew McIntyre, the real person, to have that moment of victory with the crowd, wrestling is acting, and he lost like a champ after putting on a great match. And I, as someone who didn't super care, wasn't super invested, watched a few interviews with him, he seems like a great guy, but now I'm moved. I'm like, fuck, no, shit, he deserved that moment. If they rematch, if there's another crowd there, I'm like, don't you do this, give it to him. He deserves it, come on, oh, kick out, blah, blah, blah. I'm more interested. So that's fascinating. Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler versus, I'm on night 2, back to night 1. Natalya and Tamina won the tag team turmoil. That was cool, like they're OGs, man. They deserved, I think I predicted in my little predictions league with my friends that they'd win, just because out of nowhere the last couple of weeks, they became a tag team for starters, and they're both like dynasty members of these big name families, and not creative, not really giving them much, and they go on talking smack, and Paul Heyman gives them a talking to, as he is wont to do, and it got them both a bit fired up, and they're talking all the smack on social media. And I just had a feeling it's like they're late runners to it, but like they might just get that honorary "you've been around long enough" award, that they deserve it. And it was a fun match, but it was also like a let's simmer down. A few tag teams got to just have their Mania moment. I kind of wanted the Riot Squad to win, if not Natalya and Tamina, but alas, Mandy Rose fell on her bum. That was funny. What can you do? I think like anything, you just get up and keep walking. Good on her. Cesaro versus Seth Rollins. Oh, like I thought it was going to be good. I had a bit of a funny feeling where I'm like, does Seth feel like this is a step down? I'm always second guessing the real person, what they're really thinking. I'm like, are you thinking you deserve Roman's spot right now? Where are you at, headspace wise? You know, catching up with what he's saying online and stuff didn't seem so. It seems like he gets the ebbs and flows of the business, and this is a big moment for him. And also to put over Cesaro, and god damn, did he do that? What a great match. Such a high pace, such a high intensity, and almost repeating the WrestleMania 31 spot where Seth is going to stomp Randy, and then Randy ends up RKOing him, when Seth is going to stomp Cesaro, and then Cesaro European uppercuts him. Mwah, beautiful. Such a good match. It went exactly the right length. I don't know, I felt like the crowd was on fire for Cesaro. He does his swings, but his leg is a bit out of commission, but he comes back later in the match and he's able to get off 20, 30 plus. And then the fucking, whatever you call it over here with the Superman, the UFO, I don't know what they called it, but first he's spinning him and I'm like, oh, it's like he can do more than the swing and he's breaking out for Mania. That's fun. I haven't watched too many of his independent matches, and apparently he used to do this, but when he dropped his hands and kept spinning, and Seth's like, I literally popped so hard. I was like, oh my god, this is so good. Like, there's something about a big, I don't do this often move, but I'm going to do it for Mania move, where if they pull it off, I'm like, that's the biggest show of the year. There's so many people watching you live. There's so many people watching at home. The fact that as a performer, you can have something in your back pocket that you pull off. I'm just so happy for the performers, man. And Cesaro smashed it and he won. And for someone quite, not somber, but not too emotional as Cesaro, I feel like legit we saw behind the mask for a few seconds after the win. I think I personally read into it just a performer's relief and happiness that it all went off without a hitch and he got his moment. Fucking so happy for Cesaro. Seth did a fantastic job. They were both amazing dance partners for each other. It's like you think they've had very, very few singles matches while both being in WWE. Like everything WWE does, the second I say that, they're now going to have 20 and it's going to get too much and we'll be sick of it. But they've only interacted in tags and goddamn the chemistry. Like, I love when timing-wise something comes together like that, like a fresh matchup when both are at their peak. I think it's a funny one where it's like it could have been either higher up on the card or for some kind of title. But if anything, the prize is the slightly lowered expectation of not being too high up on the card or fighting for a title. And it matched the crowd's energy after the women's tag team turmoil of like being up for it. Like, you know what I mean? Being the main event with the title sometimes can be a bit much, especially, and you've also got the factor. So you've got those expectations and you've got we're at the end of the night, we're main eventing. So like, slightly lower stakes feel, but it is a singles match at Mania. Like, I think it helped it really nicely. AJ Styles and Omos against the New Day. Got a bit happy as fuck to see Big E introduce them. That was so fun. And even Big E, when he showed up to be with his boys backstage, during one of the promos during the rain delay, I was really happy. So that whole thing was nice. I'm sort of a bit confused by this Big E solo, but we're still the New Day. Like, I get it. It's just a presentation thing. You need Big E to be the solo guy, but whenever he wants, he can sort of dip into the New Day. Like, I get it. Like, I do want to have my cake and eat it too. I don't, just because it's wrestling, you don't have to break them up and have to pay it off with a match. Like, they've earned something different with the energy and the tenure, so long-standing, so reliable, bringing such a specific element to the variety show that is the WWE, that I'm glad they're doing it in this way, even though sometimes I'm like, well, just come back and be the New Day all the time again. But they've overdone that dynamic and it does mix things up, but they don't need to do a blow-off match either. So I think it's just wrestling brain where you're like, wait, if you're not together, just have the blow-off match. No. I don't want you to fight. I don't want this an undisputed era thing all over again. So, to be honest, that was kind of the highlight of the match for me because, AJ versus Kofi and Xavier was fun. And then I get it, it's just not my cup of tea, and I get it, it works in wrestling, and I really appreciated the performances of Kofi and Xavier in selling it, but it was all about the debut of Omos, and he's a big monster, and he had 3 or 4 moves. He ran to either turnbuckle with a bit of a back elbow, he had a sort of slam on the knee, did some great facial expressions, had great intensity, wasn't too slow, wasn't too fast. I always I'm cringing and looking through my fingers when he's on the mic, but he's really, really tall and can wrestle a bit. Cool. And AJ gets to be his mentor, again, cool. Getting to see the art of selling from Kofi and Xavier, not only selling, but being so terrified. Really great. Kofi selling that last powerbomb thing by literally being looking dead. Great. But I sort of feel similar about a few years ago. I feel like it was the Usos versus the New Day versus the Bludgeon Brothers. Rest in peace, Brody Lee. And the whole match was just for the Bludgeon Brothers, basically. And you could have had I feel like it was quite short as well. And with all that talent in the ring, you're have a classic match. Xavier, Kofi, and AJ, classic match material, but the thing to do, the case with the Bludgeon Brothers a few years ago, where there was a few fun spots, but the main point was get them to win. And I feel like I'd be very surprised if I looked it up and I was wrong, that it was a more than 10-minute match, and roughly same here, 10 to 15 max, and it was about getting almost the heel guy, the hot tag at the end, and AJ managing to do the flying forearm by jumping onto Omos's shoulders. That was so good, because you see as he jumps, his feet sort of aren't properly on the shoulders, and then the way he comes off, it's he's gonna fuck this up, but he could be fucking 50. He's AJ Styles. He made it work. You could just see how it wasn't perfect, but he made it work. I love how it's little moments where he just one little wrong push of a muscle or balance, bit of adjustment, he falls flat on his face. And even though the landing wasn't perfect and the shoulders weren't perfect, and it wasn't he got off and got enough of a forearm, it worked. So, okay, they're tag champs now. Now what? Let's get AJ being a maniacal, shitty, almost manager heel, I guess, and maybe the New Day try again and get squashed again. I don't know. I don't know where we go with Omos. I feel like every now and again we do this with the big new guy, and we'll get to another big new guy in Braun later, but he's the rarer just about success story, and then it happened night 2 with this Babatunde guy with Apollo. I'm just a bit wary of that we're introducing this massive looking guy who can also wrestle a bit, and we're going to come to why being able to do more than wrestle a bit is very important with the Bad Bunny match. But next is Braun Strowman versus Shane McMahon. Okay, this was weird. I feel like this was probably the most hated on match in terms of the build-up from amongst my group of friends. Same, and Shane, it's okay, you're just saying blah Braun and you're stupid, and it's Shane can fill a gap on the hole. That's Shane's thing. What do you need me for? Braun hasn't got a match. We want to do something with Braun stuff. Braun's a funny one because there's been occasional rumors that he's not as committed as he should be. For a while he had such a hot run, he could have been the next Hogan you were hearing, and it just never quite. I think he got the title ever so briefly, but he didn't hold on to it. So I'm always thinking, what are they, how do they, I'm always trying to read into it, how do they feel about Braun? And I think this match shows that they think a lot of him, and he's clearly at the very least dedicated physically, because goddamn, he looked great, coming out all topless and jacked. Pardon me. And it's funny how this whole thing has turned into a defending anyone who's ever been called stupid, because I've heard a lot of, rightfully cynical takes on how that's a weird direction for this match to take out of nowhere, that he's suddenly defending everyone who's ever been called stupid in their lives. It reminds me of Israel Adesanya, the MMA fighter, who I feel he dedicated his fight, maybe after Paulo Costa, to all people who have ever been bullied. And he's I'm doing this for all of you who have ever felt bullied by the jock, kind of thing. And like, even if it's corny as fuck, that meant a lot to Izzy, and that's awesome. And I feel like when Braun started doing it, I see a performer who's keyed into a way of like keeping a certain level of intensity up. Like, he found a key with that. I legit think that the way that he would repeat it and get all fired up, and he had a really good segment on Raw Talk where he talked about it, and he talked about his bum leg and his rough childhood, and I was like, this whole thing about I have been legit called stupid, and I'm dedicating it to people who have like, I'm like, there's something there for the performer where he's keyed into something that emotionally works for him and triggers him and gets his energy and intensity and purpose and momentum up. Great, cool. And then the enigma that is Shane McMahon. How does someone that rich do stuff that fucked up? I know it's the take everyone has. I'm not adding anything to the conversation, but he does the coast to coast. He's even just regular bumps. This man being 50 something or whatever. Like, bro, the amount of stuff you've done. You're a legend. Chill backstage. Be an on-screen character. Like, every year for Mania, you're going to put your body through this. Some of those moves are so fucking dangerous. You're not constantly in the ring and training. What a weird performing legacy he leaves of, like, periodically, I guess, for Manias, stepping in and doing a few, like, he does a bit of a match, and he does serviceably for someone who doesn't wrestle on the regular. And, you know, the dynamic of him being an absolute chicken shit, chatting all the shit, having Elias and the other guy come out and help him. It's all good and above average, and the fact that the crowd know him, it works in his favor. But then, you know, he eventually has to do that spot at the end, and it's really great how he's coming down the cage, and he does the bye-bye, and Braun grabs his hand, like, you see it coming, but you love it anyway. And then Braun gets him back up somehow and shouts at him, and then Shane does the thing. And watching it in slow motion, it's like he's done crazier shit. And that was like the big, I'm doing something crazy for this year's Mania. Just jumping from the cage, taking a nice, like, flippy bump. But watching it in slow motion, he's doing the whole thing you have to do when you take a bump, of like landing on your shoulders first, stuff I don't properly understand. So, like, it's good in a way, because watching a 50-year-old do it, who's done far too much damage to his body already, it's like, fuck me, that hurts. What the fuck are you doing that for? It really brings home how, like, every bump you just, as an audience member, take for granted. Even before that spot, I was like, Shane, really? Do we have to do this? Then with that one, I'm like, oh my fucking God. Like, oh my God, what a weird, I'm seeing lots of takes about Shane, and I can't say I'm the biggest fan, or that, you know, more importantly, that I understand where it's coming from. Like, I get that he wants the best for the business, but this is a lot. And then Braun, you know, does the running power slam and wins. I guess it just occurs to me that possibly one reason, I don't know about in Manias the past years or going forward, what Shane has been up to and what he's going to do going forward, but this year might have had something to do with the fact that no Cena, no Undertaker, no Lesnar. We had all three, two of them in cinematic matches, notwithstanding. We had all three last year, and this is the first year none of them. It's kind of mad. So the fact that, especially, you know, the Undertaker, streak or no streak, his, like, signature, and no Triple H. I guess that was last year too. But, like, these are some big, we get a Triple H match, an Undertaker match. These are sort of WrestleMania staples. And over the course of 2 nights, none of those big four, as it were. So Shane McMahon, in recent years, has been that guy, and maybe that's why he's still stepping up to give that marquee name, that marquee match. And he knows that the crowd expects it, so he has to deliver one big high spot. I guess maybe there's some daredevil in him that loves it. I hope there is. You've got kids. You don't have to do this. I don't know. I kind of love that he does. I can't wait for the podcast episode when he explains it. I really don't want it to go too far one day. Like, maybe quit while you're ahead. I feel a bit torn about it, to be honest. Okay, Bad Bunny and Damian Priest versus John Morrison and The Miz. Fucking, I popped hard for the Canadian Destroyer. Did they call it the Bunny Destroyer? Bad Bunny, man. Bad fucking Bunny. I'm a big Bad Bunny fan now. I've been saying that ironically since he started showing up on WWE TV. Not anymore. Give me all the Booker T, pom, 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 pom. Like, not my kind of music usually, but I shall be more open-minded. Apparently, millions across the world love it. He's a fan growing up. We can relate to that, and we all heard about him putting in the work at the training center, relocating to train properly. The respect all the other WWE superstars gave to him after the fact, deserved. Special mentions to The Miz and the Morrison, who did a fantastic job putting him over. Like, I watched back that Canadian Destroyer so many times that, like, really watching how Morrison pops out of it, like, proper extends and over dramatizes the actual, effects of it. Like, one example, Miz's facial expression when he sees that, Damien Priest's jaw dropping. Like, they all facilitated that as professionals so well, and great for Damien Priest, who I saw in London at an ROH show not that many years ago, and he was obviously super impressive, but like, I would not have predicted this. He was on NXT like 6 months ago or something, and now he's in a WrestleMania match in a tag team with Bad Bunny. Super enjoyable. For a minute, I was like, okay, Bad Bunny's been in the ring like, 10 minutes, and we're not getting Damien a tag. Like, usually you'd think the celeb would be the hot tag who can come in, do one sort of stupid move, and everyone cheers. This is what I was talking about with Almost. Like, is it just me being biased against the big guys? I don't know, but like little, scrawny celeb Bad Bunny fucking scrapping in there, fucking working some arm drags, fucking working some holds, like, got a bit of lucha touch about him. I think something that was really nice and emblematic was when he did the splash off the top rope again. You could see how much more confident he was than at the Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble, he was like, hey. This time he was like, hey! Like, awesome. I love that growth. Like, and anything that shows how hard wrestling is. So he couldn't roll out of bed and do that. He put in a lot of work to pull off a really, really good match. But it was clearly hard, man, and it makes you look at all the other wrestlers a bit different, where it's like you take it for granted that it's super easy, and it's just not. And I think it improved Damien's stock, and Miz and Morrison, although very much not getting the lip-syncing vibe. It's like, either play the song and just dance to it, or actually sing it, but maybe that's too hard. I don't know. That, like, when it started, like, not matching up their singing with the backing track, I was like, oh boy. But the bunnies were funny. They've been really hilarious for me together. It's been really heartwarming, actually, how dumb and nerdy they are together since Morrison's come back. The fact that Miz was able to recover from losing the title, I felt so bad for him. But like, now that he's got Morrison there, like, there was this fun slot for them. I think they did it. They pulled it off so well. If the whole thing backstage that's like an honorable thing, is like, no matter what you're given, you make the most of it. They smashed it. I loved it. And then the main event. Listen, Sasha Banks is, one of my favorite wrestlers. I love her so much. And just like with Drew at the start, man, I'm still gutted she lost. Oh, man. But what a match. What a match. High octane. So many moves. Sasha is so good. Bianca's so good. The fucking bench pressing her, walking up the steps, the whip of the hair. Sasha. Oh, what led to the bench pressing up the steps was Sasha suicide diving out of the ring, and then Bianca sort of getting pummeled back and catching her and sort of lifting her up. Great chemistry. I did not think the promos were super on point leading up. And then suddenly there's a promo package and highlights, and you're like, okay, that does cover the basic story. Maybe no one isolated promo or exchange did it, but altogether you can cobble it, which is sort of a secret sauce for WWE. And you can make it look like what you need it to look like in the promo package. I'm like, yeah, okay. Sasha thinks she's a rookie. Bianca thinks I might be a rookie, but I'm better than you. Sasha thinks I'm the best. I've proven it. Bianca's like, yeah, you have been the best, but I'm the new best. Okay. That's what wrestling should be. I'm the best. No, I'm the best. And when both have such a claim to it, and this, I guess, was all about Bianca going from having a claim to it to like really cementing it. And I still think Sasha's the best, man. I don't know. It's like she lacks some of this is sort of one of those. She lacks some of the physical. It's fucking Ronaldo, Messi. Like, Messi lacks some of the physical gifts Ronaldo has, but look what he does. But then you also think Ronaldo, on the other hand, some of the, silky touches and the way the foot sticks to Messi's ball, it doesn't come as naturally. He's renowned for like being more of a hard worker, having to train hard every day. I've sort of played both sides for both people there, but basically, Sasha isn't as athletically exceptional as Bianca, but she's very, very athletic and she uses what she has. And I think the thing we love about Sasha, similar to Bayley, is how much her love of professional wrestling shines through. And with her sort of quite small, winnowy frame, she comes off as legit ferocious and really smart in the ring, really badass. Like, I think the best thing you can say about it is that she made her heroes very proud with that match, headlining Mania. I think Eddie would be smiling down from heaven, fucking clapping for that one. The first two black women to headline WrestleMania, when Michael Cole actually said it. And yeah, I don't know, Bianca seems great, but I stan Sasha, so I was a bit bummed by the end, but so happy for them both to have pulled off such a good match. And I guess, I don't know about Bianca holding the title just because as a character, as a wrestling character, I don't know where she's at with it. Her promos are good. She's not, I don't worry for her. I always tell my friends that a thing for me watching wrestling is, as a fellow performer, if when I watch you on the mic, I'm distracted by being worried for you, either embarrassing yourself or losing track. If you're not committed and fully in the zone, in the moment, in the flow, I'll be worried, and that'll just, for you, if nothing else, and that will distract me as a viewer. So Bianca doesn't really stray into that territory. She's not that bad, but she hasn't keyed into something electrifying and dynamic in her personality, which is fine. Maybe she's just a humble champ who has a great husband and a fairy tale love story there, works hard for her family, is sweet. Maybe that's who she is because she can fucking kick ass in the ring. But where do we go from here? Does Sasha want a rematch? I don't know, there was something a bit more safe pick with Sasha for me, where Bianca could keep fighting it, Sasha could keep doing her thing. She holds up a division so good at the top of the card, and she doesn't have Mania wins. Okay, that's something stupid, but for a fan, give this girl some Mania wins. But listen, we move. It was a great WrestleMania moment. It did remind me of sort of being a kid watching Brett versus Shawn and being legit with every fall and every false finish, being oh my god, and then you're actually you catch yourself watching two performers fight for it. It's a lot of the time you're watching it going, these are two performers working with each other to portray a match, and then when that line gets blurred and you feel for a bit you're watching two performers fighting for it, two fighters fighting for a prize, and that match did that. Probably the match of the weekend. Let's go through the other ones a bit more quickly now, and I think that'll be easy because night 2 wasn't as great, and I can't tell if it's WrestleMania fatigue. I think in theory we all love the idea of a 2-night WrestleMania where in a 6-7 hour 1-night WrestleMania, that shit will kill you, and the fatigue will be from hour 2 till hour 6. So of course give it 2 nights, and it's not just to get every wrestler on the card, but that's another nice bonus of it, that in theory you can get more people on the card. So I don't know what it was, man. Maybe night 1 was just so special to have the crowd back after a year for the first time, that there had to be a little lull. Or maybe, whether it's the writing or the performances, maybe you got to be a bit real and be it didn't bring the heat as much night 2, starting with The Fiend versus Randy Orton. They did this before. I did not expect to be saying this, but this is probably even less satisfying than the Maggots one. The fuck was this? Really short match, and then Alexa starts bleeding black blood from her face, and then Randy gets an RKO win. I don't know, I'm all up for being creative with The Fiend and doing weird shit, but that lost me in the same way the last season of Lost some people, where it's so wait, were they just gonna at the end try and tie a bow on it? They didn't have this figured out. All these weeks where it's they are the main segment to finish off Raw at the end, and it's well, surely there's some weird mythical thing being built here where they actually have a payoff. And surely Mania is that payoff. No, apparently not. Baffling stuff. Okay. Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler defeated Tamina and Natalya. Great match. I love seeing Shayna out there. Tamina standing off against Nia Jax is always fun. Shayna against Natalya is always fun. Those old school grappling skills. I guess for me it was just like, oh, go on then. Give Natalya and Tamina the titles. Bless their little hearts, and they didn't. So I was going, But Shayna and Nia celebrating together afterwards was fun because they could be a quite contentious couple. And you know what hasn't been commented on much that I noticed? No Reginald. Which, like, A, is probably better for the story and for Nia and Shayna. More Shayna than Nia, but you know what I mean. Sorry for Reginald. Suddenly, 1 second he's on our TVs way too much. The next second he doesn't get a Mania spot. Kevin Owens defeated Sami Zayn. Let's see how... 9 minutes, that match. Not even 10 minutes. Because I was seeing some love for this match, and these two are probably my two favourites on the card. I fucking love these guys. And I was like, why? Battleground was better. Why didn't I love that match? It was literally just time. They could have had more time. What they did do was great. I just think I had it in my head that, like, not only do they get their dream of having a singles match at Mania, they're also going to be able to go for like 25 to 30 minutes, and they didn't. So until the Logan Paul stunner, I felt a bit like, but they still got their moment. They still got their match. They got to pull out a few amazing moves, a few apron bumps. Yeah, I just wish they got more, but I'm being greedy. They got their WrestleMania match, and it was a really fun 10 minutes. But like, I think I spent the first 10 minutes thinking this is a 10-minute build-up. So that when it ended, I was like, what? Too soon. Sheamus defeated Riddle, seeing some hate for this match online. I think one or two spots that was botched. It was a bit like, it took you out of the moment a bit. But Sheamus redeemed it all with that fucking bro kick as Riddle's in midair. It reminded me of this super kick that Adam Cole nailed on Ricochet from a takeover a few years back. Like, midair moments in between being crucial sort of stuff is very impressive to me. I love them laying it in a bit rough. I love that body. Was it a belly-to-belly suplex? It was some crazy move Riddle did off the top rope to Sheamus. I think Riddle's so good. I think Sheamus is so good. Was it just a bit too rough and tumble? There was something about it where just one or two things. As a performer, again, I feel like you watch them and it's like you can almost feel their nervous energy go up when a few moves get botched. And they can feel a bit, like there was this one, I think Sheamus was trying to deliver a white noise and fell off the top rope, or Riddle was trying to lift Sheamus up for a suplex and he couldn't, like Sheamus fell down, and then he got it up again. And even when Sheamus fell down from the white noise thing, I was like, is he just going to try again? But he just sort of did it and got on with it. And you can sort of sense like, oh, they know they're fucking up and just have to keep going with it. You want them to stay in the moment. And they did. I think that was more me worrying for them. Like, those are two fucking pros, man. One a legit ex-MMA fighter and a very underrated pro of pros in Sheamus. Like, I've never been a big Sheamus fan, but I've been legit so impressed with him of late. Last 6 months, pandemic era, I guess, in terms of his utter consistency and just throwing himself into these really hard matches after such a history of injuries. I was impressed enough that I was initially gutted for him to not be involved in the world title match. So, like, I never doubted him. It's just, yeah. Very minor botches, but it did colour the match slightly differently. The fact that Riddle has not had the best run as US champ in terms of wins and stuff, and like you think they're making new stars. I was a bit surprised they didn't give it to Riddle, but on the other hand, it's like Sheamus has also taken so many L's, and I think getting this title rounded off him getting to be a Grand Slam champion, possibly. So, like, well deserved, I guess. Fair enough. Apollo Crews defeated Big E. Babatunde turned up at the end. Okay, Wale wrapped him out. That was really fun. You know how meaningful that is to those two. And I love his new theme. There were drums around the ring. There were kendo sticks. I've got to admit, I feel like the performers brought it, but like I was getting a bit fatigued at that point. Because I remember they start the match both fucking going mental, hitting each other with kendo sticks, don't they? And I was just like, okay, this is a lot. Like, I'm not quite there with you in terms of this intensity, guys. Maybe the promo package just didn't grab me. Maybe I was finding the build-up great, and I'm so impressed by Apollo's evolution as a performer and keying into this Nigerian sort of prince mold. But something about this match didn't quite find me, and then I felt a bit vindicated and not being super emotionally invested when the end was Babatunde basically helping Apollo to win. And yeah, they're both so great. I don't know. I feel like some of their matches and interactions on SmackDown were better. The Nigerian drum fight, like, what was it? Just a bit of a no DQ match, but there were some drums about the ring. Like, I don't know, could they have done something cooler there? Depending on where Big E goes next, I'm not mad. If Big E just stays in this feud and goes back down the card, if he can end up maybe being the next guy to start going up the card against Roman, I'm thinking him or Cesaro, then I don't know. Happy for Apollo to get a big moment that didn't, a year ago, would not have predicted this. Really thought people who were holding out hope for Apollo were not watching the performer I was, and then suddenly look how he turns it around, shows you what I know. One of my favorite parts about wrestling, you know, watching Becky Lynch during some of the fallow years when she's on either Raw or SmackDown, couldn't have predicted what I love when there's this untapped potential that either the performer themselves or the audience members aren't seeing, and then whatever circumstances or focusing on themselves, keying into it, is such a good microcosm for, like, in life, you know, I wonder what it takes. Is it Vince noticing something? Is it your boss noticing something? Is it you finding this inner resolve, keying into a new self-belief, a new phase in your life? So, like, really impressed and happy for Apollo. And I just, I hope this means bigger and better things for Big E too. Rhea Ripley defeating Asuka. Yeah, it's like the weekend of new champs and the future of WWE. Rhea Ripley's great. She's undeniable. Really, really good on the mic. Really, really good in the ring. Had a really fun match with Asuka. I think we were all like, until the last minute, is Charlotte getting added into this match? Like, this match didn't get enough time to cook over. They got to do a sit-down contract signing of sorts, if I recall correctly. And, oh no, we have to team together thing that WWE does constantly. And those are like 2 segments to build up a fucking Wrestlemania match. I think that's all they had. So, like, no wonder I wasn't. And they'd already done the Rhea being skyrocketed to the top and getting a Mania match sort of last year thing. So it wasn't this like, oh my God, we never expected her to be here. They also did weeks, if not months, of Raw build up before she finally turned up. Like, it's a weird one with Rhea where they could have done a really amazing surprise pop once and had it be a big deal, but like she's sort of been stop started. But no, really good match. Bit long, but fun. They're both so amazing. I'm always like, I wonder what now with Asuka. Like, she's amazing and incredible, but like, is she just going to keep doing her? Is the character going to change? Is she going to leave WWE? Like, I always feel a bit like maybe it's the lack of English, but it's like, I wonder what's going on with that performer. She's been a very consistent NXT and WWE performer for what, coming up to 5, 6, 7 years now? Where does the character go from here? She took an L to Charlotte at Mania, now to Rhea. She's so amazing in ring. I even wonder what age she's getting to. She can still clearly go and be amazing, but like, yeah, I wonder. She's a really good title holder who gives up her belt in big Mania matches, apparently. Amazing, I guess. But now what for the character? I think this is the most ever intrigued I've ever been by, like, so you're just staying at the top of the card, chilling? Like, I don't know, I want some sort of change. Dark Asuka, I don't know, do you know what I mean? Like, just something. And Rhea's great, and her and Bianca running the show now. It's mental. I feel more confident, like, I still think there's room to grow, but I do feel more confident in Rhea on the mic as opposed to Bianca. Even though Rhea, at the start of Mania Night 1, she's crying on stage. So she flips. On the mic, she can get confident and feel her character, but she also slips out of character. It's weird. Bianca did that at the start of her match with Sasha, to be fair, almost tearing up. Like, that was a moment, man. And I loved seeing Sasha, like, I could be here in this moment with you and also cry, but I'm going to be the one to get us back on track. It was almost like a reflection back onto the match where, like, you're the rookie. Sasha's younger, but she is more experienced in ring. And I loved that just for a split second, she was there with her, almost crying. And then I feel like Sasha got her into the match. And then Bianca dropped it and got straight in. Bless her. The same way that Rhea, emotional night 1, but she came out fully in character and just committed to it. I think they're both great. I just think there's so many questions, which is great. WrestleMania should leave you with more questions than answers. Fiend versus Randy is the exception there. We need fucking answers there. Roman versus Daniel versus Edge. Great stuff. I mean, if for nothing else, the spot where we've got two cross faces and a metal bar in Roman's face, and Edge and Daniel Bryan start headbutting the shit out of each other. This whole late inclusion for Daniel Bryan thing is weird for me, because I love Daniel Bryan, and if he hadn't had this spot, I think Daniel Bryan's in this forever weird position until he's no longer wrestling for the WWE or in general, where it's like, if he's not in the main match, we'll all want him to be there, but then sometimes when he is there, it doesn't fully fit. So this was a weird one where every now and again there was like an Edge versus Daniel face-off or a Roman versus Edge face-off, and you're like, you know, Ronda versus Becky versus Charlotte was great a couple years ago. Would Ronda versus Charlotte have been better? Would Edge versus Roman have been better? There's something about, mono, and even the package it can help with. But I think something they really could have leaned on a bit more. It almost reminded me of the Young Bucks versus, who was it? Versus the Golden Lovers a few years ago. I feel like they had one tag match. It must have been a sort of ROH New Japan crossover show. But I just remember it being a really emotional match, and everyone, there's lots of like spots where people are almost crying, and the story being told is amazing. I really felt like there was a similar dynamic here where it's like, use more real life. The story here isn't just who wants to be the best. Of course, that's the main story, who wants to be the best. Daniel feeling like, no, I want my flowers now. Even though secretly we all know, Daniel, that your whole thing is getting other people over and you don't really give a shit about your own accomplishments. We know this about you, but okay, there must be some part of you that feels like, Edge, I'm back, I'm really the radar superstar, I get to right this wrong, I get to come back and reclaim my dreams. Like, at your age, after the heartbreak you've been through, this being your first love, fucking love it. Roman, you fucking finally found your character, and now there's a crowd here, and you are legit the best. Keep being the best, fuck all these nerds. Fuck the old legends coming back, and this dickhead who started the whole Roman hate, Daniel Bryan did, by not being in that Rumble all those years ago. Fuck all of them, you're the best. Okay, so there is a story there. But the real story for me is these three all going through these traumatic retirements. Roman with leukemia, Edge with his neck injury 10 years ago, Daniel Bryan with his neck injury a few years ago. All of them had these in-ring retirements. And here we all are. Like, fair enough, still hate each other, but I think part of the story is these are three amazing gentlemen who have been through actual heartbreak and loss with this specific activity, and they were all here to headline Mania. I don't know, I just felt like there was something very emotional for me watching it that I think they could have leaned into more. In terms of the match, very vicious, really, really well paced for a triple threat. It reminded me in a way of Brock versus Cena versus Rollins, just in terms of there's just as many opportunities as pitfalls that open up with a triple threat, and they really leaned into them and made a great job. Jey Uso did a great job. Paul Heyman did a fantastic job just by looking so engrossed every second, like he always does. They all got really great moments to shine and be angry and won it, and really fun, enjoyable match. That now that the thing about a main event for Mania is always like, okay, it's the last, you can see the time go, and we're about to, is either Brock gonna come, that insatiable part of a wrestling fan that wants some sort of surprise, some twist. It can't help but flare up a bit. So I think this match is gonna get a lot clearer on a rewatch, where we know definitively it ended like that, let's just watch the match to see what it is. Because I'm convinced, beat for beat, that was up there with the Bianca versus Sasha match. Fucking brutal and quick-paced and expert professional wrestling. At the top of the card for a reason. Not just the storyline of the title, but these are three who know how to put on a headlining WrestleMania level match. But still, man, the way Roman won. So for years, since I've been a fan again, basically, for years the complaint about WrestleMania main events has been, and then Roman wins and everyone boos, right? And they did it again. But they went even harder. And Roman put Edge on top of Daniel Bryan, I think, and pinned them both. Brutal. Except finally, he's a heel. But they still did it. And I guess for now, I don't know if he ever even sniffs peak rock level charisma, but he's the peak of his powers as Roman at the minute in his heel role with Paul Heyman. And you can't really, what a romantic story it would have told for Edge to win the title, even as the biggest Daniel Bryan fan. It was hard to see how that story would make sense going forward if he won it. Unless, if he was legit, because he keeps saying this might be like my last WrestleMania. If he was legit gonna retire or there was something going on with his contract, that would have enhanced the story for him to win. Edge, it being 10 years to the day since he retired, that would have been a beautiful story. But like, you think, another thing is, you think they have a triple threat so someone doesn't have to eat a pin. So like, oh, if Daniel Bryan's there, Roman can pin him, and Edge doesn't have to eat it. Or Edge can pin Daniel, and Roman doesn't have to eat. Roman pinned both of them. What the fuck? So like, Daniel and Edge out here just like, okay, Vince, Roman is the guy. It's taken us forever to really fully accept it, but now as a heel, I think it's really hard. I've never been the biggest Roman fan, but like, he is the best wrestler going. Like, he's not my favorite, but he's the best. He's amazing. He's incredible. Keep him champ. It would have felt weird to not have him champ at the end unless there was a very intriguing story going there. Night 2 wasn't as good as Night 1. Night 1 was fantastic, but I think there are lots of factors there. Very intrigued for Raw tonight. And I'm very fatigued by wrestling in general. So let's just get to the end. Let's have a nice little Raw, nice little SmackDown. The bit of me, I don't know what this Raw after Mania is going to look like compared to other Raw after Manias. If there is a crowd or not. Give us a few surprises, come on. Come on, I'd love a few little surprises. One big return. You know, Brock, Cena, Becky, someone. But no, I think just from a performance standpoint and from like this WWE as this company, this brand, is one thing, but for me, I see it as like a performing little, almost like a theatre company. Like, all of them stood out there at the beginning together. Like, it's the current cast of WWE, just like the current cast of SNL. For them, I'm just super happy they pulled off a great show. And yeah, so many of them smashed it, and really fun. Wrestling's great. What a fun time. To think of last year's Mania compared to this one. They ended up pulling out of the bag last year. It was a lot of fun. They kept the ship afloat, but like, you know, I don't wanna be too happy about it, because who knows the twists and turns with the pandemic and the vaccine and all this fucking crazy shit. But like, live crowds, man, and I miss like live music in the theater and seeing my friends. But like, wrestling especially, just the chants. I'm so sick of piped in noise in every sporting avenue possible. Fucking stop it. Just let me hear the crickets and the performer and the athletes. But yeah, hearing the crowd is fucking fantastic as a fan. And I think they smashed it. And see what happens next. That is my WrestleMania 37 2021 review. Good night.